Virgin had never touched a woman before, but this innocent young woman won him over instantly. Remington Alexander Vale lived his life like a perfectly choreographed dance, every step calculated, every move precise. The gleaming glass towers of his tech empire in downtown Seattle stretched toward the clouds, a testament to his unwavering discipline and control. At 32, he had built $1 billion company from the ground up, his name synonymous with innovation and precision. But behind the polished facade of success lay a secret that would make headlines if ever revealed. The most eligible bachelor in Seattle's tech scene had never been with a woman, not because of lack of opportunity, God knows he'd had plenty, but by choice. Her choice rooted in the strict values instilled by his father, who had drilled into him since childhood that true intimacy was sacred, meant only for real love. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office as Remington adjusted his custom Tom Ford suit. The subtle scent of Creed Aventus lingered in the air, a fragrance that had become his signature. His reflection in the window showed a man of contradictions, sharp blue eyes that could pierce through any business rival's defenses, yet held a vulnerability he desperately tried to hide. "Mr. Vale?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Your new executive assistant is here for orientation." Remington pressed the button, his voice steady. "Send her in." The door opened, and Chaos walked in wearing Jimmy Choo heels. Kiora Michelle Lane wasn't what he expected. Her natural curly black hair cascaded past her shoulders, defying the typical corporate aesthetic. She wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, but there was something untamed about her presence that made his carefully ordered world tilt on its axis. The subtle scent of YSL black opium drifted toward him, and for a moment he forgot the carefully prepared speech he had mentally rehearsed. "Mr. Vale." Her voice carried a quiet confidence that caught him off guard. "Thank you for this opportunity." He gestured to the chair across from his desk, watching as she sat down with graceful precision. A leather-bound notebook rested in her hands, an anachronism in his paperless office that somehow suited her perfectly. "Miss Lane," he began, his tone measured. "Your credentials are impressive. Harvard Business School, top of your class. 4 years at Goldman Sachs." He paused, studying her face. "Why leave New York for Seattle?" A slight smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Sometimes the most interesting opportunities aren't in the most obvious places, Mr. Vale." Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. Remington felt his pulse quicken, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years of business meetings and power plays. "Your references speak highly of your organizational skills," he continued, forcing himself to look down at his tablet. "I run a tight ship here at Vale Technologies. Everything has its place, its purpose, including people." The question was soft but direct, catching him off guard again. He looked up, finding her dark eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him want to loosen his tie. "Especially people, Ms. Lane. Clear boundaries are essential in any professional relationship." "Of course," she nodded, but there was something in her expression, a hint of challenge, perhaps, that made his carefully constructed walls tremble slightly. The orientation proceeded with mechanical precision. Remington explained her duties, the company's protocols, his expectations, but beneath the professional exchange, an undercurrent of tension crackled between them. Every time she made a note in her leather-bound notebook, he found himself watching the way her fingers curved around the pen. When she tucked a stray curl behind her ear, his eyes tracked the movement before he could stop himself. "One last thing," he said as the meeting drew to a close. "I noticed in your file that you were raised by a single mother in Chicago." Something flickered in her eyes. Pride, perhaps, or defiance. "Yes, she taught me that in this world, you have to be twice as good to get half as far. It's a lesson I've never forgotten." The honesty in her voice resonated with something deep inside him. For a moment, his carefully maintained facade cracked, allowing a glimpse of genuine emotion to show through. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "And she is." Kiora stood, smoothing her skirt. "Will that be all, Mr. Vale?" He nodded, unable to trust his voice as he watched her walk toward the door. Just before she reached it, she turned back. "You know, Mr. Vale, sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from embracing a little chaos." The door closed behind her, leaving Remington alone with the lingering scent of her perfume and the unsettling feeling that his perfectly ordered world was about to be turned upside down. Later that night, in his penthouse overlooking the Seattle skyline, Remington stood at his window, scotch in hand. The city lights blurred into a tapestry of golden points against the darkness, but all he could see was the way Kiora's eyes had challenged him, the way her presence had made his carefully constructed walls feel paper-thin. His phone buzzed with a message from his father. "Dinner tomorrow. The board wants to discuss succession planning." Remington set the phone down without responding. For the first time in his life, the weight of family expectations and corporate responsibility felt suffocating. He loosened his tie, a rare gesture of rebellion in his strictly regulated world. The scent of her perfume still lingered on his suit jacket, a reminder of the moment their eyes had met. In that brief connection, he had felt something he'd never experienced before, a dangerous mix of desire and recognition, as if some part of his soul had been waiting for her, without his knowledge. Clear boundaries are essential, he had told her. But as he stood there in the darkness, watching the city below, Remington Alexander Vale realized that some boundaries were meant to be crossed. And for the first time in his 32 years, he wasn't sure if he had the strength or even the desire to resist. His perfectly ordered world had developed its first crack, and her name was Kiora Lane. 2 weeks into working with Remington Vale, Kiora understood one fundamental truth. Control wasn't just his preference, it was his armor. She watched him from her desk outside his office, the glass walls between them doing nothing to diminish the electric current that seemed to pulse whenever they were near each other. Every morning followed the same routine. He arrived precisely at 7:30 a.m., Armani suit impeccable, his presence commanding attention without effort. She would already be there. Caramelized coffee in one hand, his schedule meticulously prepared in the other. Their fingers would brush as she handed him the tablet, and for a fraction of a second, time would stop. "Good morning, Mr. Vale," she would say, professional as ever, pretending not to notice how his blue eyes darkened when they met hers. "Ms. Lane," he would reply, his voice controlled but carrying an undertone that made her skin tingle. Today was different. The Seattle rain pounded against the windows, matching the tension that had been building between them. Kiora sat at her desk, unconsciously twirling a curl around her finger as she reviewed the quarterly reports. The sound of Remington's voice drifted from his office, where he was on a video call with investors. "The merger is proceeding as planned." His voice carried authority, but she heard the subtle strain beneath it. She knew why. The past week had been a dance of near touches and lingering glances. Yesterday, when she'd reached across his desk to point out a discrepancy in the contracts, his breath had caught audibly. She'd looked up to find his eyes fixed on her lips, his knuckles white as he gripped his pen. The call ended, and she heard him sigh. Without thinking, she grabbed 2 cups of coffee and entered his office. "You look like you could use this," she said softly, placing the cup on his desk. Remington looked up, his facade cracking just enough to show his exhaustion. "Thank you, Miss Lane." "Kiora," she corrected gently. "After hours, in private. I think you can call me Kiora." His jaw tightened. "That would be inappropriate." "What's inappropriate is pretending there's nothing here." She gestured between them, her voice barely above a whisper. The silence that followed was deafening. Remington stood, walking to the window, his back to her. "We can't have this conversation." "Why? Because you're afraid of losing control." He turned sharply, his eyes blazing. "Because once I start, I won't be able to stop." The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and warning. Kiora's heart thundered in her chest, but she held his gaze. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. "The Seattle meeting's been moved up. We need to fly out tonight." The sudden shift in topic was like a bucket of cold water. Kiora straightened, professional mask back in place. "I'll make the arrangements." Hours later, they sat in adjacent first-class seats, the plane cutting through storm clouds. Kiora pretended to read reports while acutely aware of every breath Remington took beside her. He hadn't spoken more than necessary since their moment in the office, but she felt his eyes on her when he thought she wasn't looking. The turbulence hit without warning. The plane dropped suddenly, and Kiora's hand instinctively grabbed Remington's arm. He covered her hand with his, and for a moment, neither moved. "It's okay," he murmured, his thumb unconsciously stroking her skin. "Just a rough patch." The double meaning wasn't lost on either of them. By the time they landed in Seattle, the storm had intensified. Remington's phone rang as they collected their luggage. "What do you mean, cancelled?" His voice carried frustration. "No, we need to be back in time for tomorrow's board meeting." A pause. "All flights are grounded." Kiora watched as he ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a rare display of agitation. "We'll have to stay the night." he finally said, ending the call. I'll have the hotel arrange separate rooms. The Olympic Hotel's lobby was grand, all marble and crystal, but Kiora barely noticed. Her mind was on the way. Remington's shoulders had tensed when the concierge apologized profusely. Only one suite was available due to a conference in town. It's fine, she said quickly. I can find another hotel. In this storm, absolutely not. His protective instinct overrode his usual restraint. The suite has 2 bedrooms. We're both adults. We can handle this professionally. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent, charged with unspoken words. The suite was beautiful, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the stormy Seattle skyline. Remington immediately headed to his room, his goodnight clipped and formal. Kiora changed into silk pajamas, but sleep eluded her. The storm raged outside, lightning illuminating the city in brief. Brilliant flashes. After an hour of tossing and turning, she walked to the suite's living room, hoping a glass of water might help. She found Remington already there, standing by the window, his suit jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, and her breath caught at the raw emotion in his eyes. "Why do you test my control?" His voice was rough, vulnerable in a way she'd never heard before. Kiora moved closer, drawn like a moth to flame. "Because I see past it, past the suits and the schedules and the rules. I see you, Remington. You don't know what you're asking for," he warned, but he didn't step back as she approached. "I'm not asking for anything," she whispered. "I'm offering. There's a difference." Lightning flashed again, illuminating the struggle on his face. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse. "If I touch you, everything changes. Maybe it's supposed to." The last thread of his control snapped. His hands cupped her face with infinite gentleness, thumbs stroking her cheeks as if she were something precious and fragile. "Tell me to stop," he breathed. Instead, Kiora rose on her tiptoes, bringing her lips a breath away from his. "Never." Their first kiss was hesitant, a whisper of contact that sent electricity through both of them. Then Remington groaned, deep in his throat, and pulled her closer. His kiss deepened, revealing the passion he'd kept locked away for so long. Kiora's hands slid into his hair, destroying its perfect arrangement, as his arms wrapped around her waist. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Remington rested his forehead against hers. "We can't go back from this," he whispered. "I don't want to go back," she replied, her fingers tracing his jaw. "I want to go forward, with you." He closed his eyes, vulnerability and desire warring on his face. "You make me want things I've never allowed myself to want." "Good," she whispered, pulling him down for another kiss. This time, there was no hesitation, only the sweet surrender of a man finally allowing himself to feel. Outside, the storm raged on, but neither noticed. In that moment, there was only this, the taste of forbidden desire, the sound of ragged breaths, and the knowledge that nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after their night in Seattle dawned with cruel clarity. Remington stood at the suite's window, watching the sun rise over the city while adjusting his fresh suit. Behind him, he could hear Kiora's soft breathing from the bedroom, and every inhale felt like a reminder of what he'd done, what they'd done. His phone buzzed. A message from his father. "Board meeting at 2 p.m. Don't be late. We need to discuss the future of Veil Technologies." The words sat heavy in his stomach. Last night, in the storm's chaos and Kiora's arms, the weight of his responsibilities had seemed distant. Now, in the harsh light of day, reality crashed back with devastating force. The bedroom door opened, and Kiora emerged, already dressed in her backup outfit, a black pencil skirt and cream silk blouse. Her curls were perfectly arranged, but Remington remembered how they had felt wrapped around his fingers just hours ago. "Good morning," she said softly, professional mask firmly in place despite the intimacy they'd shared. "Kiora," he started, then stopped, uncertain for the first time in his life how to proceed. She saved him from his awkwardness. "The 9 a.m. flight back to San Francisco is confirmed. We'll make it in time for the board meeting." The flight home was a study in careful distances. They sat in their first-class seats like strangers, both hyper-aware of each other but maintaining the facade of normalcy. Every time their eyes met, memories of the previous night flashed between them like lightning. The Veil Technologies building loomed before them as their car pulled up. Remington adjusted his tie, a nervous habit he'd never quite broken, and turned to Kiora. "About last night, Mr. Veil," she interrupted gently. "We have a board meeting to prepare for." He nodded, grateful for her understanding of timing, even as his heart ached at the formality of her address. The morning passed in a blur of preparations. Kiora moved through the office with her usual efficiency, but now Remington noticed the small things, how she bit her lip when concentrating, the way her fingers lingered when passing him documents, the subtle scent of her perfume that now carried memories of passion. At 1:45 p.m., his brother Ethan sauntered into his office without knocking. "Well, well," Ethan drawled, dropping into a chair. "Someone looks different today." Remington didn't look up from his tablet. "Side, what do you want? Can't a brother check on his favorite CEO?" Ethan's casual tone carried an edge of something sharper, especially when said CEO spent an unplanned night in Seattle with his very attractive assistant. Remington's head snapped up. "How did you—" "Please," Ethan waved dismissively. "The hotel reservation change went through our corporate account. But don't worry, I handled it before anyone else noticed." He leaned forward, his playful demeanor dropping. "You need to be careful, Rem. Father's planning something big today, and you can't afford any distractions." Before Remington could respond, Kiora entered with the board meeting materials. She faltered slightly at seeing Ethan, but recovered quickly. "Miss Lane," Ethan greeted with a knowing smile. "Lovely to see you." "How was Seattle?" "Productive," she replied coolly, placing the folders on Remington's desk. "The merger details are finalized." "I'm sure lots of things were finalized," Ethan muttered, earning a sharp look from his brother. The board meeting room was already full when they arrived. Richard Vale, Remington's father, sat at the head of the table, his presence commanding attention without effort. His steel-grey eyes tracked his eldest son's entrance, noting how Kiora followed 2 precise steps behind. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard began once everyone was seated, "we're here today to discuss the future of Vale Technologies, specifically the succession plan." Remington felt his stomach tighten. Beside him, taking notes, Kiora's pen paused imperceptibly. "Our company stands at a crucial juncture," Richard continued. "The merger with West Coast Innovations will make us the largest tech conglomerate on the West Coast, but such growth requires stability." His eyes fixed on Remington. "Traditional values, strong leadership that reflects our company's commitment to excellence and propriety." The emphasis on the last word was subtle, but clear. Remington maintained his composed expression, even as he felt his world starting to crack. "To that end," Richard announced, "the board has decided to accelerate our succession timeline. Remington will assume the role of CEO fully within 6 months, with one condition." He paused, his next words falling like bombs in the quiet room. "He must be married within that time frame." The silence that followed was deafening. Remington felt, rather than saw, Kiora's shock beside him. "Marriage shows stability," Richard explained smoothly. "Our shareholders need to know that the future of Vale Technologies rests in the hands of someone who understands the importance of tradition and family values." "And if I refuse?" Remington's voice was quiet but firm. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then the board will be forced to consider other options for leadership, perhaps someone more traditionally minded." The threat was clear. Everything Remington had worked for, everything he'd built, hung in the balance. After the meeting, he retreated to his office, loosening his tie as soon as the door closed. Kiora followed, closing the door behind her. "Remington," she began, but he cut her off. "Don't!" His voice was rough with emotion. "Please, just don't." She moved closer anyway, placing a hand on his arm. "Fiz, we need to talk about this." He turned to face her, and the pain in his eyes made her heart ache. "What is there to talk about? My father just made it very clear what's at stake." "So that's it?" Her voice trembled slightly. "One night of letting yourself feel something real, and now you're ready to go back to being the perfect son?" "You don't understand," he growled, running a hand through his hair. "This isn't just about me. Thousands of jobs depend on Vale Technologies remaining stable. My father knows exactly what he's doing. He's forcing me to choose between my heart and my responsibility." "No." Kiora stepped closer, her eyes fierce. "He's forcing you to choose between fear and love." The word hung between them, charged with possibility and danger. "Love?" Remington's voice was barely a whisper. "We barely know each other. But you feel it too," she challenged. "That's what scares you the most, isn't it? Not your father's threats, not the company's future, but the fact that for the first time in your life, you want something more than control and success." He moved suddenly, pulling her into his arms and kissing her with desperate passion. When they broke apart, both breathing heavily, he rested his forehead against hers. "I can't lose everything I've built," he whispered. "Sorry, but I don't know how to let you go either." Kiora touched his face gently. "Then don't. Fight for both. Fight for us." Outside his office, the corporate world continued its relentless pace. Inside, Remington Vale faced the biggest decision of his life: maintain the perfect facade his father demanded, or risk everything for a chance at real love. And for the first time, the choice wasn't as clear as he wished it would be. The next 2 weeks became an elaborate dance of stolen moments and careful deception. During office hours, Remington and Kiora maintained their professional facades with practiced precision, but behind closed doors, in brief moments between meetings, their resolve crumbled like sandcastles against the tide. Today was no different. Kiora sat in her usual spot during the morning executive meeting, taking notes while Remington led the discussion about quarterly projections. To anyone watching, they were the picture of professional detachment. Only they knew that beneath the conference table, their ankles were crossed, that simple point of contact sending electricity through both of them. "The Asian market expansion needs to be accelerated," Remington was saying, his voice steady despite the way Kiora's foot had just brushed higher up his leg. "We can't afford to lose ground to our competitors." A knock at the door interrupted the meeting. Richard Vale entered, his presence immediately commanding attention. Kiora quickly shifted her legs away, but the slight narrowing of Richard's eyes suggested he'd noticed something. "Don't let me interrupt," Richard said smoothly, taking a seat at the far end of the table. "Please continue, son." The meeting proceeded, but the atmosphere had shifted. Remington's shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly, and Kiora focused intently on her notes, feeling Richard's calculating gaze alternate between them. After the executives filed out, Richard remained behind. "Miss Lane, would you excuse us? I need a moment with my son." Kiora gathered her materials, careful to keep her expression neutral. As she passed Remington, their eyes met briefly, a silent exchange loaded with unspoken words. Once the door closed, Richard's pleasant demeanor dropped. "I've arranged a dinner for tomorrow night. Olivia Winters will be joining us." Remington's jaw tightened. "The daughter of Winters Telecommunications?" "Precisely," Richard smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She's recently divorced, well-educated, from an excellent family. Perfect CEO wife material. I'm not interested in an arranged marriage, father. And I'm not interested in watching you throw away your legacy for a temporary infatuation with your assistant." The words hung in the air like poison. Remington kept his face carefully blank. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult my intelligence, son." Richard stood, straightening his already impeccable suit. "I built this empire by noticing details. The way you look at her when you think no one's watching, how she shifts slightly every time you enter a room, like a flower turning toward the sun." He moved toward the door, then paused. "End it now, before it becomes a scandal. Dinner is at 7 tomorrow, don't be late." Outside in her workspace, Kiora tried to focus on her computer screen, but her mind kept drifting to the conversation happening behind those glass walls. She jumped slightly when her phone buzzed, a text from her best friend, Harmony Drake. "Girl, we need to talk. Lunch today. No excuses." An hour later, Kiora sat across from Harmony at their favorite sushi restaurant, picking at her rainbow roll while her friend fixed her with a knowing stare. "Spill," Harmony demanded. "Something's different about you. You're glowing 1 minute, distracted the next. And don't think I haven't noticed you checking your phone every 30 seconds. As if on cue, Kiora's phone lit up with a message from Remington. "Need to see you. Private dinner at my place tonight." Harmony caught the smile that flitted across Kiora's face. "Oh my God," she breathed. "You're sleeping with him, aren't you? With Remington Vale?" "Shh," Kiora glanced around nervously. "It's complicated. Complicated is what you call a Starbucks order. This is nuclear. He's your boss. He's practically royalty in the tech world. And his father..." Harmony's eyes widened. "Does Richard Vale know?" "I think he suspects," Kiora admitted, pushing her sushi around her plate. "He showed up at the morning meeting today, watching us like a hawk. Kai, you need to be careful. Men like Richard Vale don't just protect their business interests, they destroy anything that threatens them." "Remington's different," Kiora insisted. "What we have, it's real. Real enough for him to risk everything?" Harmony's voice was gentle but concerned. "You know they're probably already looking for a suitable wife for him. Someone from their world." Kiora's phone buzzed again. "My father's arranged a dinner tomorrow. With Olivia Winters. Her heart sank as Harmony's words proved prophetic. I have to go, she said, standing abruptly. Work emergency. Back at the office, Kiora threw herself into her tasks, trying to ignore the ache in her chest. When evening fell and the office emptied, she finally allowed herself to look at the last message Remington had sent. Still coming over. Her response was simple. Yes. Remington's penthouse felt different at night. The floor-to-ceiling windows reflected their images against the backdrop of city lights, creating the illusion that they were suspended in space, away from the world's demands. He wants me to marry her, Remington said without preamble, pouring them both a glass of wine. Olivia Winters. The merger would be perfect, according to him. Two tech dynasties united. Kiora accepted the wine but didn't drink. And what do you want? He moved closer, his fingers tracing her jawline. You know what I want, but wanting isn't always enough in my world. Then maybe your world needs to change, she challenged, setting down her glass. Maybe we all wear masks, Remington. The perfect son, the obedient assistant. They're just roles we play, but this, right here. She placed her hand over his heart. This is real. He pulled her closer, his kiss desperate and hungry. Stay with me tonight, he whispered against her lips. Let me pretend, just for a few hours, that we live in a world where I can choose my own path. Later, tangled in his sheets, Kiora traced patterns on his chest while he played with her curls. What happens tomorrow? She asked softly. Tomorrow I go to dinner and play my part, he replied, his voice tight with resignation. But tonight, he rolled over, capturing her lips in a tender kiss. Tonight belongs to us. Outside, a shooting star streaked across the sky, unseen by the lovers lost in their private paradise. Neither spoke of the storm clouds gathering on their horizon, of Richard's machinations, of corporate expectations, of the impossible choice looming before them. For now they had this, stolen moments in the darkness, where titles and expectations fell away, leaving only the truth of their hearts beating in sync. But as the night deepened, both knew that dawn would bring reality crashing back, and with it, decisions that could either unite or destroy them forever. The Pacific Union Club stood as a monument to old money and power, its stone facade watching over San Francisco like a sentinel of privilege. Remington adjusted his bow tie in the back of his Bentley, his father's words echoing in his mind. Don't disappoint me tonight. Inside his suit pocket, his phone buzzed with a message from Kiora. Remember who you are, not who they want you to be. The simple text made his heart clench. He'd left her in his bed this morning, her curls spread across his pillows, looking more like home than anything he'd ever known. Now, hours later, he was about to have dinner with the woman his father had chosen as his future wife. The maitre d' led him to a private dining room where Richard Vale already sat with Harrison Winters, CEO of Winters Telecommunications, and his daughter, Olivia. She rose as Remington entered, and he had to admit his father's choice was strategic. Olivia Winters was classically beautiful, with blonde hair styled in perfect waves and a midnight blue dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Remington, she greeted with a practiced smile. It's been too long. Olivia. He kissed her cheek, the gesture as hollow as the crystal glasses on the table. They'd run in the same circles since childhood, their families, empires, intersecting at every turn. I ordered the 82 Bordeaux, Richard announced as they sat. I remember it's your favorite, Hot Olivia. You have an excellent memory, Mr. Vale, she replied, her smile suggesting this was more than a casual dinner. The evening proceeded like a carefully choreographed dance. Harrison Winters spoke of market expansions and merger possibilities. Richard dropped subtle hints about family traditions and legacies. Olivia played her part perfectly, intelligent enough to discuss business, but careful never to overshadow the men at the table. Remington's taking full control of Vale Technologies in 6 months, Richard mentioned casually over the main course. The board is quite insistent that he needs a stable personal life to match his professional success. Olivia's hand brushed Remington's arm. Stability is so important in our world, isn't it? My brief marriage to James taught me that sometimes we need to experience the wrong path to appreciate the right one. Under the table, Remington's phone buzzed again. He ignored it, but his thoughts flew to Kiora, probably working late at the office, maintaining their facade of professional distance. The merger possibilities between our companies are intriguing, Harrison Winters mused. With the right personal alliances, Wayne, we could dominate the tech sector for generations. The implication was clear. This wasn't just dinner. It was a business negotiation disguised as matchmaking. "Excuse me," Remington stood abruptly. "I need some air." He escaped to the club's balcony, loosening his bow tie as San Francisco's lights twinkled below. His phone showed 3 missed messages from Kiora. "Thinking of you. Your father's assistant just asked me to clear your schedule for the next month, for personal arrangements. I guess the dinner's going well." The last message carried a pain he could almost taste. "Hiding from us already?" Olivia's voice came from behind him. She joined him at the balcony, offering a glass of scotch. "Your father mentioned you might be resistant to this arrangement." Remington accepted the drink but didn't respond. "You know," she continued, "we could be good together. Both of us understand this world, its expectations, its privileges and its prices." She moved closer, her perfume expensive and unfamiliar. "I wouldn't demand love, Remington, just partnership, respect. We could build something powerful." "And if I want more than power?" His voice was quiet but firm. Olivia laughed softly. "More like love? With your assistant, perhaps?" His head snapped toward her and she smiled knowingly. "Please, the way your face changed when you checked your phone, I know that look." Her expression softened slightly. "I felt it once too, with someone inappropriate. But we have to be realistic about our positions in life." Inside, their fathers were probably already discussing merger terms, treating their children's futures like corporate assets to be traded. "I should get back to the office," Remington said stiffly. "Early meeting tomorrow." "Of course." Olivia touched his arm. "Think about what I said. We could make this work, on our terms." The drive back to Vale Technologies was a blur. It was past 11 when he reached his office, but light still spilled from Kiora's desk. She sat there, attempting to look busy, but clearly waiting for him. "How was dinner?" Her voice was carefully neutral. Instead of answering, he crossed the space between them in 3 strides, pulled her up from her chair, and kissed her with a desperation that surprised them both. She responded immediately, her fingers clutching his lapels as if afraid he'd disappear. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, she whispered, "That bad, huh? They have it all planned out," he said, his voice rough. "The merger, the marriage, the future of both companies. It's like a chess game where I'm just another piece to be moved. And Olivia is exactly who my father wants for me. Beautiful, sophisticated, understands the game." He touched Kiora's face gently. "Nothing like you. Is that a compliment or a warning?" She tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. "Both." He rested his forehead against hers. "They're going to announce the merger talks next week. The press will start speculating about Olivia and me. Photos will surface of tonight's dinner. Social media will explode with stories about Tech's next power couple. So this is it." Kiora's voice trembled slightly. "This is where you choose duty over love." "No," he said fiercely. "This is where I figure out how to have both. I need time to find a way that doesn't destroy everything I've built." She stepped back, and the loss of contact felt like physical pain. "Time isn't on our side, Remington. Your father's already making arrangements. The board is waiting, and She swallowed hard. "I can't be your secret forever. It's not fair to either of us." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we need to face reality. Maybe Olivia's right about people knowing their place in life." "You heard her? I hear everything in this office. It's my job, remember?" She gathered her things, movements sharp with suppressed emotion. "Go home, Mr. Vale. You have an early meeting tomorrow." The formal address hit him like a slap. "Kiora, please." "Good night, sir." She walked out, her heels clicking against the floor, each step taking her further from him. Remington stood alone in his darkened office, the city lights casting shadows around him. On his phone, a message from his father popped up. "Excellent dinner. Winters is ready to move forward. You made the right choice." But as he watched Kiora's car pull away from the building, taillights disappearing into the night, Remington Vale had never felt more wrong about anything in his life. The headline blazed across Kiora's phone screen. Tech's new power couple, Vale Technologies and Winters Telecommunications, merger talks, spark romance rumors. Below it, a photo of Remington and Olivia leaving the Pacific Union Club, her hand resting intimately on his arm. It had been 3 days since that dinner, 3 days of professional smiles and careful distances, 3 days of watching Remington field calls about the potential merger while pretending her heart wasn't breaking with each passing hour. "Ms. Lane," his voice came through the intercom, steady and professional. "Could you come in here, please?" She entered his office, tablet in hand like armor. Remington stood by his desk, looking exhausted despite his impeccable appearance. "The press is getting aggressive," he said without preamble. "They'll start digging into everyone connected to both companies, including key employees." Understanding dawned. "You mean me? I need you to be prepared. They might find out about Seattle." The memory of that stormy night hung between them, electric and painful. "What do you want me to say if they ask?" "Nothing." His jaw tightened. "Let the PR team handle it. They're preparing a statement about Olivia and—" "Don't!" Kiora held up a hand. "I don't need to hear the details of your arranged marriage. It's not like that." "Really?" She pulled up the news article on her tablet, turning it to face him, "because the whole world seems to think otherwise." Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. Olivia's name flashed on the screen. Kiora turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Stay, please." She remained, watching as he answered the call on speaker. "Remington." Olivia's voice filled the room. "Have you seen the coverage? Your father's thrilled. The markets are already responding positively to the merger rumors." "The markets respond to facts, not gossip," he replied tightly. "Don't be naive. Our family's personal connection adds value. Speaking of which, the mayor's charity gala is next week. We should attend together, make it official." Kiora moved to leave again, but Remington caught her wrist, his touch sending electricity through her skin. "I'll think about it," he told Olivia, ending the call. "Let me go," Kiora whispered. "I can't." "You have to." She pulled her wrist free. "Your world is calling, Mr. Vale. Don't keep them waiting." That evening, Kiora found herself in a small bar in North Beach with Harmony, drowning her sorrows in expensive wine. "You need to get out," Harmony insisted. "Transfer to another company. Put some real distance between you and this mess." "I can't just leave." "Why not?" "Because you're hoping he'll choose you over billion-dollar mergers and family dynasties." Harmony softened her tone. "Kai, men like Remington Vale don't give up their kingdoms for love. That only happens in novels. You don't know him like I do." "No, but I know his type. My father was on the board of 3 Fortune 500 companies. These people live by different rules." Kiora's phone lit up with a message from Remington. "Come to my place tonight. We need to talk." "Don't go," Harmony warned, reading the text over her shoulder. But 2 hours later, Kiora stood in Remington's penthouse, the city glittering below them like scattered diamonds. "I'm not going to the gala with Olivia," he said as soon as she entered. "You should. It's good for business." "Stop." He moved closer. "Stop acting like this doesn't matter, like we don't matter. What do you want from me, Remington?" Her voice cracked slightly. "To wait in the shadows while you play the perfect heir? To watch you build a life with someone else? I want time to figure this out." "Figure what out? How to have everything? The merger, the perfect wife, and the assistant who warms your bed?" She laughed bitterly. "I won't be your dirty secret." "Is that what you think this is?" He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "You think I'm just playing with you. I think you're trapped between what you want and what you think you owe your family. And I think I'm tired of watching you choose duty over love every single time." He moved suddenly, backing her against the wall, his body caging her in. "You want to know what I choose?" His voice was rough with emotion. "I choose the way you challenge everything I thought I knew. I choose the sound of your laugh when you think no one's listening. I choose the fire in your eyes when you're angry, like right now." His lips crashed into hers, the kiss desperate and hungry. Kiora responded despite herself, her fingers tangling in his hair as years of his careful control shattered. When they broke apart, breathing heavily, she whispered, "Choosing me in private isn't enough. Then we'll go public. Tomorrow." She pushed him back gently. "No, not like this. Not as some reactive decision because you're afraid of losing me. What do you want me to do?" "I want you to figure out what you really want, Remington. Not what your father wants, not what the board wants, not even what I want. What do you want?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Outside, a police siren wailed in the distance, its cry matching the ache in both their hearts. "I should go," Kiora said softly, moving toward the door. "The Seattle hotel," he called after her. "You asked me why I couldn't stop myself that night." She paused, hand on the doorknob. "It's because for the first time in my life, I met someone who made me want to be more than my father's son, more than Vale Technologies' heir. You made me want to be just me." Kiora closed her eyes, fighting back tears. "Find that person, Remington. The one who's more than his father's son. When you do," she looked back at him one last time, "maybe then we'll have a real chance." She left him standing in his penthouse, surrounded by the trappings of his perfect life, yet feeling more lost than ever. On his phone, messages piled up, from his father, from Olivia, from board members excited about the merger possibilities, but all he could think about was the scent of Kiora's perfume lingering in the air, and the growing certainty that he was about to lose the only thing that had ever made him feel truly alive. The mayor's charity gala transformed San Francisco's City Hall into a glittering showcase of power and wealth. Kiora stood in the background, tablet in hand, watching as Remington navigated the crowd with Olivia on his arm. She hadn't wanted to be here, but as his executive assistant, her presence was required. "They look perfect together, don't they?" Richard Vale's voice came from behind her, smooth as aged whiskey, but laced with warning. "The press certainly thinks so." Kiora kept her expression neutral. "The merger talks are generating a lot of positive coverage." "Indeed." Richard moved to stand beside her, both of them watching as Olivia laughed at something Remington said. "It's interesting how things work out. Sometimes what we want isn't what we need." "I'm not sure I follow, sir." "I think you do." He turned to face her fully. "You're excellent at your job, Miss Lane. One of the best assistants Remington's ever had. It would be a shame if personal complications were to interfere with your career trajectory." Before Kiora could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. Harrison Winters was approaching, his face thunderous. "Richard," he called out, "we need to talk. Now." Kiora watched as the two men disappeared into a side room, but her attention was drawn back to Remington and Olivia. They were speaking with a group of reporters, Olivia's hand possessively on Remington's arm. As if sensing Kiora's gaze, Remington looked up, their eyes meeting across the crowded room. For a moment, the mask slipped, and she saw the torment in his expression. Her phone buzzed with a message from him. "Meet me in the West Corridor. 5 minutes." She shouldn't go. She knew she shouldn't. But 5 minutes later, she found herself in the dimly lit corridor, away from the party's glitter. Remington arrived moments later, his bow tie slightly loosened. "I'm sorry," he said immediately, "for all of this." "Are you?" She kept her distance. "Because from where I'm standing, you seem to be playing your part perfectly. It's all falling apart." He ran a hand through his hair. "Harrison Winters just found out about Seattle. Someone leaked the hotel records." Kiora felt her blood run cold. "What?" "The story's going to break tomorrow. Vale Technologies CEO airs secret. Night with assistant. They're going to drag your name through the mud. Let them." Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. "I have nothing to be ashamed of. My father's already implementing damage control. They want to announce my engagement to Olivia tonight. Get ahead of the story." The words hit her like physical blows. "And you're going to do it." "I don't know what else to do." His composure cracked. "If this gets out, the merger falls apart. Thousands of jobs could be affected. My father's legacy—" "Stop!" Kiora's voice echoed in the empty corridor. "Just stop. Your father's legacy. What about your legacy, Remington? What about the man you want to be?" He moved closer, reaching for her, but she stepped back. "Don't. You don't get to touch me while wearing the ring she picked out." His hand dropped to his side. "There is no ring, not yet. But there will be. Tonight." She laughed, the sound hollow. "You know what the worst part is? I actually thought you might choose me." "How naive is that?" "Kiora, please." "Mr. Vale," Olivia's voice carried down the corridor. "The press is asking for you. They want a statement about the merger." Remington closed his eyes briefly, his next words barely a whisper. "I have to go." "I know." Kiora straightened her spine. "You always do." Back in the main hall, she watched as Remington took his place beside Olivia at the podium. Richard Vale stood to one side, Harrison Winters to the other, both men looking pleased despite their earlier argument. "Ladies and gentlemen," Remington began, his voice carrying across the hushed room, "tonight marks a historic moment for both Vale Technologies and Winters Telecommunications." Kiora couldn't bear to hear more. She slipped out a side door onto the building's steps, the cool night air a blessed relief against her flushed skin. Her phone buzzed, Harmony calling. She answered mechanically. "Kai, turn on any news channel now. There's something you need to see." "I know about the story. It breaks tomorrow." "No, not that. It's about Vale Technologies. There's been a leak. Internal documents showing Richard Vale's been manipulating stock prices ahead of the merger announcement. The SEC is already involved." Kiora's world tilted. Inside, she could hear gasps and murmurs as phones throughout the gala lit up with the breaking news. She rushed back in just in time to see Richard Vale being approached by federal agents. their badges glinting under the chandelier lights. Harrison Winters was already backing away, protecting his company's interests. Olivia stood frozen at the podium, her perfect composure finally cracking. And Remington stood in the center of the chaos, watching as his father was led away, as his carefully planned future crumbled around him. Their eyes met across the room once more. This time, there was something different in his gaze, something that looked almost like freedom. But before either of them could move, reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, and the moment was lost in the erupting scandal. Kiora slipped out of the gala amid the chaos, her heart pounding. In her purse, her resignation letter sat ready, written days ago when she'd finally accepted that loving Remington Vale meant being willing to let him go. She just hadn't expected the universe to have such dramatic timing. Behind her, City Hall blazed with lights and activity as one of San Francisco's greatest business dynasties faced its darkest hour. And somewhere in that chaos was the man she loved, finally facing the truth about his father's empire and perhaps about himself. But Kiora Lane had learned her lesson about waiting for men to choose her. This time, she chose herself. 2 weeks after the gala, Vale Technologies' headquarters felt like a ghost town. Security guards escorted employees carrying boxes of personal belongings, while FBI agents combed through digital records. The empire Richard Vale had built was crumbling, its foundation exposed as a house of cards. Remington hadn't left the office in 3 days. His suit jacket hung abandoned on a chair, sleeves rolled up as he pored over financial documents. The stubble on his jaw and the dark circles under his eyes testified to endless nights of discovering just how deep his father's deception went. Her resignation letter still sat unopened on his desk. The SEC investigation is expanding, his brother Ethan announced, walking in without knocking. They're looking at partnerships going back 15 years. Remington didn't look up from his computer. How many employees are we losing? 20% already gave notice. More will follow. Ethan dropped into a chair. Have you talked to her? Now Remington did look up, his eyes sharp despite his exhaustion. Yeah, I don't. She's the only one who can verify you weren't involved in father's schemes. The Seattle trip, it proves you were focused on legitimate business while he was manipulating stocks. I'm not dragging her into this mess. She's already in it, brother. The press is still running with the scandal angle. Vale Air's secret affair sells more papers than corporate fraud. Remington's jaw tightened as he picked up a newspaper. The headline screamed, Vale Technologies in chaos, stock manipulation, secret romances, and the fall of a dynasty. His phone buzzed. Another message from Olivia. We should release a joint statement. Distance ourselves from the scandal. He deleted it without responding. Across town, in her small apartment in Russian Hill, Kiora sat surrounded by job applications. Harmony perched on the couch, watching her friend with concern. The New York Times called again. Harmony said, They want your side of the story. There is no story. Kiora's voice was firm as she typed another cover letter. Really? Because according to Twitter, you're either a corporate spy who exposed Richard Vale's crimes, or the innocent assistant whose affair with the CEO's son brought down an empire. Twitter can bite me. But Kiora's hands shook slightly as she reached for her coffee. Her phone lit up with an unknown number. She ignored it, like she'd ignored all calls for the past 2 weeks. The only one she wanted to hear from hadn't reached out. You need to talk to him, Harmony said softly. He made his choice at the gala. Did he? Because from what I heard, he never got to finish that speech, never announced the engagement, never chose anything before his father's arrest blew everything up. Before Kiora could respond, her laptop pinged with a news alert. Breaking, Remington Vale steps down as Vale Technologies CEO. Her heart stopped. The article detailed how Remington had called an emergency board meeting, voluntarily stepping down to allow for a complete investigation of the company. He would remain as a board member, but would no longer lead the company his father had built. Kai! Harmony's voice seemed distant. Breathe! The intercom buzzed. The doorman's voice crackled through. Mrs. Lane? There's a Mr. Vale here to see you. Time seemed to freeze. Harmony stood, gathering her things. That's my cue. Just hear him out, okay? Minutes later, Remington stood in her small living room, looking both out of place and somehow exactly where he belonged. His usual perfect appearance was gone, replaced by something more raw, more real. You resigned, he said simply. You stepped down, she countered. I had to. The company needs a fresh start, someone untainted by the Vale name. Is that why you're here, to explain your business decisions? He moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'm here because for 2 weeks I've been trying to save my father's company, but all I could think about was how I almost lost something far more valuable. Remington, let me finish. Please." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "My whole life, I tried to be the son my father wanted, the heir he could be proud of. I measured every decision against his expectations, every choice against his approval. And now I know his approval was built on lies. The empire he wanted me to protect was hollow. But the one real thing in my life, the one choice that was purely mine," his voice cracked slightly, "I almost lost her because I was too afraid to stand up for what I wanted." Kiora's heart thundered in her chest. "What do you want?" "You." He closed the distance between them. "I want the way you challenge me, the way you see through every wall I build. I want your strength, your fire, your unwavering belief in doing what's right. I can't be your safe harbor in a storm," she whispered. "I won't be the comfort prize now that your perfect life has fallen apart. You were never the safe choice, Kiora. You were the brave one." His hand cupped her face. "Loving you terrifies me, because it's the one thing in my life I can't control, can't predict, can't manage into neat little boxes." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "And that's okay. It's more than okay, it's everything." He pulled the crumpled resignation letter from his pocket. "I'm not accepting this. Not unless you can look me in the eyes and tell me you don't love me anymore. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Life isn't fair, but love." His thumbs wiped away her tears. "Love is about choosing someone even when it's not fair, not easy, not perfect. Your father is facing the consequences of his choices. Now I'm facing mine." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you, Kiora Lane. Not in secret, not in shadows. Completely, publicly, terrifyingly." She gripped his shirt, years of control crumbling. "If you hurt me again, I won't." His voice was fierce. "I'm done letting fear drive my choices. Done letting others dictate my path. The press will be brutal. Let them. I'm not my father's son anymore. I'm just a man, standing in front of the woman he loves, asking her to take a chance on him." Kiora laughed through her tears. "Did you just quote a Julia Roberts movie? If it works." His smile was soft, real in a way she'd never seen before. "Does it work?" Instead of answering, she pulled him down into a kiss that tasted of promises and new beginnings. Outside, the sun broke through San Francisco's perpetual fog, bathing her small apartment in golden light. They had no idea what tomorrow would bring. The scandal would take months to unravel. The press would spin their story 1,000 different ways. But in that moment, none of it mattered. They had chosen each other. Finally, completely, irrevocably. And sometimes, that's all love needs to grow. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Kiora's apartment, casting a golden glow over Remington as he sat at her small kitchen table, reading news coverage on his tablet. The headline made him wince. "Vale Scandal Update. Former CEO's son confirms relationship with executive assistant." "That bad?" Kiora asked, setting a cup of coffee in front of him before sitting down with her own. "How they're calling it a modern fairy tale meets corporate scandal." He reached for her hand across the table. "I'm sorry you're being dragged into this. I knew what I was signing up for." She squeezed his hand. "Besides, I think we have bigger problems than gossip columns." She was right. Vale Technologies. Stock had plummeted. Thousands of jobs hung in the balance, and the interim CEO was struggling to maintain investor confidence. The company Remington had helped build was fighting for survival. His phone buzzed, Ethan calling. "The board's emergency meeting is in an hour," his brother said without preamble. "They want both of us there." "Both?" "They're considering a complete restructuring. New leadership, new direction. They want to hear our vision for the company's future." Remington looked at Kiora, who was already reaching for her tablet to check his schedule. Some habits died hard. "I'll be there. Bring her too," Ethan added. "If we're really starting fresh, the board needs to see we have nothing to hide." The Vale Technologies boardroom felt different now. The massive table where Richard Vale had once presided now seated a mix of familiar faces and new interim directors. Remington and Kiora entered together, his hand resting lightly on her back, a public declaration of their relationship that drew subtle reactions from around the table. "Mr. Vale, Mrs. Lane," Bradford Mitchell, the lead independent director, greeted them. "Please, sit." The next 2 hours were intense. Plans were presented, strategies debated. Through it all, Kiora watched Remington with pride. He spoke with passion about transforming the company, about transparency and ethical leadership. "The Vale name has been tarnished," he acknowledged, But this company is more than one man's legacy. It's the thousands of employees who built it, the innovations we've created, the future we can still shape. And your personal situation, one of the directors asked, glancing at Kiora, is exactly that. Personal. Remington's voice was firm. But if you're asking about conflicts of interest, Miss Lane has already been offered a position at Anderson Cooper's firm. She's more than capable of building her own career outside Vale Technologies. Kiora sat straighter. They hadn't discussed this publicly yet, but the prestigious consulting firm had approached her days ago. She'd been hesitant to mention it, given everything else happening. The press will still talk, another director warned. Let them, Ethan spoke up. My brother's relationship with Mrs. Lane proved he wasn't involved in our father's schemes. Their Seattle trip was legitimate business, documented and clean. Maybe it's time we saw their story as an asset, not a liability. After the meeting in the privacy of Remington's office, Kiora finally asked, "Did you mean what you said, about being okay with me taking the Anderson Cooper position?" "Of course." He pulled her close. "You deserve to build your own path, not live in my shadow. It would mean moving to their Los Angeles office." His arms tightened around her. "I hear Los Angeles has some great tech companies that might need a reformed CEO with a slightly tarnished name, but excellent intentions." She pulled back to look at him. "You'd leave San Francisco. I'd leave anything that stands between us and happiness." He touched her face gently. "The past few weeks have taught me what really matters. My father built his empire on lies, but we can build something real, something honest." Their moment was interrupted by a knock. Ethan entered, waving a newspaper. "You might want to see this." The article was about Richard Vale. He was cooperating with investigators, accepting a plea deal, but it was the personal statement that caught their attention. "I lost sight of what truly mattered. My sons have shown me that real legacy isn't measured in stock prices or merger deals. It's measured in the courage to choose love over power, truth over deception. I hope one day they can forgive me." Kiora felt Remington tense beside her. "Have you visited him?" she asked softly. "Not yet." He set the paper down. "I'm not ready." "You don't have to be. Not yet." She took his hand. "Some wounds need time to heal." Later that evening, they walked along the beach near Baker Beach, the Golden Gate Bridge glowing in the sunset. The wind played with Kiora's curls as she leaned into Remington's side. "Anderson Cooper called again," she said. "They need an answer by next week. And I'm scared." She stopped walking, turning to face him. "Scared that if we leave San Francisco, if we start over somewhere new, this bubble we're in will burst. Reality will set in. Reality already set in." He tucked a curl behind her ear. "Reality is choosing you every morning. Reality is building something true instead of something perfect. Reality is knowing that wherever we go, whatever we face it together." "When did you become so wise?" she teased. "When I fell in love with a woman who taught me that real strength isn't in controlling everything. It's in being brave enough to let go and trust your heart." A passing jogger recognized them, doing a double take that would probably end up on social media within the hour. But neither of them cared anymore. "So," Remington pulled her closer. Los Angeles, she confirmed. "But on one condition. Name it. No more secrets, no more hiding what we feel. Whatever comes next, we face it openly, honestly, together. Deal." He sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted of salt air and new beginnings. Behind them, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of possibility. San Francisco had been their beginning, the place where a controlled man had learned to embrace chaos, where an ambitious woman had learned to trust love, where scandal had transformed into salvation. But their story was far from over. It was, in many ways, just beginning. 6 months later, Los Angeles welcomed them with endless sunshine and new beginnings. Kiora's office at Anderson Cooper overlooked the Pacific, while Remington had found his place at a promising tech startup, free from the weight of his family name. But today, they were back in San Francisco, where their story had begun. The visiting room at the Federal Correctional Facility was stark and impersonal, but Richard Vale somehow still managed to carry himself with dignity, despite the orange jumpsuit. "Son," he greeted Remington, his eyes shifting to Kiora. "Sam, Miss Lane, thank you both for coming." It was their first visit since his sentencing. Remington sat stiffly, his hand finding Kiora's under the table. "Vale Technologies announced their new CEO yesterday," Richard said, attempting normalcy. "Antonio Rodriguez, he seems capable." "He is," Remington confirmed. The company's stock is recovering. The new ethical oversight committee is in place. And you? Richard's voice softened. Are you happy, son? The question hung in the air, loaded with years of expectations and recent regrets. Remington looked at Kiora, drawing strength from her presence. I am, he answered honestly. For the first time in my life, I'm building something that's truly mine, something real. Richard nodded slowly. Your mother would be proud. She always said you had her heart, too big for the cage I tried to build around it. Tears pricked at Kiora's eyes as she watched the father and son attempt to bridge the chasm between them. She started to stand, to give them privacy, but both Vale men stopped her. Stay, Richard said. Please, I owe you an apology, Miss Lane. I judged you based on my own prejudices, my own narrow view of what success should look like. I was wrong. We all were in different ways, Kiora replied gently, but sometimes being wrong leads us to where we're meant to be. Later, walking through the familiar streets of San Francisco, they ended up at the spot where they'd first met, Vale Technologies, former headquarters. The building still stood proud, but its energy had changed. New logos, new people, new stories being written within its glass walls. So do you miss it? Kiora asked, watching Remington's face. The power, the prestige. He shook his head. I miss the dream of making my father proud, but I've learned there are better dreams to chase. They continued walking, ending up at the small Italian restaurant where they'd had their first real date, just weeks after the scandal broke. The owner, Maria, recognized them immediately. My favorite rebels, she exclaimed, hugging them both. Your usual table is waiting. Over wine and pasta, they talked about the future, Kiora's promotion at Anderson Cooper, Remington's growing influence in LA's tech scene, the house they'd just bought in Manhattan Beach. Remember our first night in Seattle? Remington asked suddenly. When you asked me why I kept running from what I felt. You said if you didn't run, you wouldn't be able to stop. She smiled at the memory. I was right. He reached into his jacket pocket. I haven't been able to stop loving you since that night, and I don't want to. The ring he placed on the table wasn't a massive diamond meant to impress. It was elegant, unique, and perfectly them, a sapphire the color of his eyes, surrounded by smaller diamonds that caught the light like stars. Kiora Michelle Lane, his voice was steady but full of emotion. You walked into my perfectly ordered world and turned it upside down. You taught me that real love isn't about control or expectations. It's about having the courage to let your heart lead. Will you marry me? Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. Yes, 1,000 times yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, applause erupted around them. Maria appeared with champagne, her eyes misty. On the house, for love that conquers all. That night, in their hotel suite overlooking the bay, Kiora curled into Remington's side, watching the city lights twinkle below. I got another offer today, she said softly, to head Anderson Cooper's new international division. That's amazing, he kissed her temple. Where would we be based? We, she looked up at him. You'd leave your startup? Kiora, he turned to face her fully. Haven't you figured it out yet? Home isn't a place for me anymore. It's wherever you are. She traced his jaw, marveling at how far they'd come. I love you, Remington Alexander Vale. I love you too. He pulled her closer. Thank you for teaching me how. Outside, San Francisco's fog rolled in, wrapping the city in its mystical embrace. But inside their suite, wrapped in each other's arms, they were perfectly clear about one thing. Their love story hadn't been perfect, but it had been real. And real love, they'd learned, was better than perfect any day. Remington's phone buzzed, Ethan sending a link to yet another article about them. The headline read, Tech's Greatest Love Story, How Scandal Led to True Romance. They still can't get enough of us, Kiora laughed. Let them write what they want. Remington tossed the phone aside. We know the real story. And what's that? That sometimes the best things in life come from letting go of control, that love is worth more than power, that the heart knows what it wants, even when the mind tries to deny it. Now you're just getting poetic, she teased. Only for you. He kissed her softly. Always for you. The night deepened around them, but neither noticed. They were too busy writing the next chapter of their story, one that promised to be even better than the last, because now they knew the truth. Love wasn't about perfect timing or social expectations or corporate mergers. Love was about finding the courage to choose it every single day, no matter what the world might say, and in each other. They'd found not just love, but the courage to embrace it, cherish it, and let it transform them into something better than they'd ever dreamed of being alone. Their story had come full circle, back to where it began. But this time, they weren't the same people who'd started the journey. They were stronger, wiser, and most importantly, they were together, and that made all the difference in the world. The end. Based on the intense journey of love between Remington and Cura, reflect. If you were in Remington's shoes, would you choose to follow your heart and risk everything for love, or would you keep up appearances and go through with the arranged marriage to Olivia in order to preserve his family's business empire? Think about the sacrifices, the consequences, and the courage required for each choice. What would you do when faced with this dilemma between family duty and true love? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.